I learned at a very young age that I was average. I was never given the hardest work to do in class, and I was never given the easiest. It was always somewhere in the middle, and my end of school report always reflected the same thing. Shows potential, but must try harder. I was a C-grade student with a willpower problem. I also learned that I was incredibly shy. I remember my first day of school, my mum dropping me off and me fighting to not be left behind and feeling quite emotional. And that was something that has continued throughout my life without the kicking and screaming, but the feeling was always still there. And I also learned that I was very good at practicing and thinking on my feet. So I gravitated towards sports. I was good at football and table tennis and most sports really. And actually in those areas, I was quite a natural leader and quite good at communicating. As this progressed on to secondary school, my teenage years, I naturally just rebelled at all of those things that caused me pain. So I messed around in class just to escape that judgment of being average. And I resisted going anywhere where I felt like I was going to be shy until later on when I discovered a really powerful medication for shyness, which is cigarettes and alcohol. And then I just spent most of my time going all in on sports and running small businesses and enjoying the communication, the leadership in those areas. I was fortunate enough later on to find a degree that allowed me to use my skills, and 60% of it was practical. So I did lots of sports conditioning and coaching and rehabilitation, and I progressed this on into a career. So as soon as I left university, I set up a consultancy of sorts, working with osteopaths, physios, chiropractors, professional football clubs, doctors. And over a 6-year period, I became busy enough to be able to open up my own studio. And this studio was right in the center of Bristol's business quarter in the UK. So we had the top 4 accountancy firms and law firms and banks. And so my typical client would be the CEOs, partners, judges, doctors from the local area. And I remember one day I was sat down with a partner in one of the local law firms. He must have been about 45 years old. And I'll be honest with you here, I'd kind of reached a point where I didn't need his custom, which very much changed the consultation process, sorry. Because I'd stopped trying to sell and I was just trying to learn about him. And he opened up about his stress and being overweight and having difficulty sleeping and drinking more alcohol, and that's why he wanted my help. And as the conversation continued, he started to tell me about where he was 5-6 years ago. It turned out that he went to the gym regularly and he ate better than he was now, and he slept better than he was now, and he was doing many of the right things. Up until this point, I'd seen myself as a knowledge worker, right, that gave them the information. But it turns out he already knew everything he needed to do. I don't know if you've ever known exactly what you needed to do, but you just couldn't get yourself to do it. So I asked him, why is it that you can't just go and do those things again? And he said, well, I lack the willpower. I need you to motivate me and hold me accountable to make sure that I do it. So this kind of sent me flying back to childhood, because I knew that I was a C-grade shy person because of my lack of willpower. And now this A-grader, he was lacking willpower as well. So I thought it might just be us too. It might be the start of a willpower epidemic. So I started asking as many people as I could, and I sent questionnaires out to companies and all of my clients. And I asked them not just in the area of health. I asked them the question, do you struggle knowing what to do, or do you struggle consistently doing it in the areas of stress and health and exercise and business and relationships? And it turns out that 90% of people came back saying they knew what they needed to do, they couldn't get themselves to do it. And this started a journey into trying to discover how to get myself some more willpower and how I could help my clients as well. And it led me to a man named Michael Perez. Michael is a neurolinguist and facilitator, And he agreed to work with me for a period until I'd achieved some goals. So we wrote down a few goals, and I thought I knew what was going to happen with the process. But to my surprise, we didn't discuss them at any point. He didn't ask me if I'd done any of the things that I said I was going to do. He didn't hold me accountable at any point. In fact, he didn't mention my goals once. He did give me a couple of tools, and one of them was an app, and I was to download this app and it would make my phone vibrate. So I kept my phone in my pocket all the time, and every time it vibrated, I had to do a big smile, a genuine smile. And he also asked me to write down 3 things that went well and 2 things that could have gone wrong but didn't. And it turns out that the stuff that you appreciates, and when you bring yourself into the present moment, stuff isn't quite so scary. So over a period of 6 months working together, I doubled the size of my business. I wrote a book. I started public speaking. I started reading an academic paper every day and writing my opinion on it and sharing it online. But at no point during this 6-month process was I aware of applying any willpower, and nobody held me accountable, and nobody motivated me. So I knew that it wasn't a willpower problem that had allowed me to overcome these things, and I didn't have a willpower problem, but I still didn't know what it was. I still couldn't apply it to anybody else. So I continued reading and researching, and it led me to another man named Dax Moy. And Dax is a coach to A-listers and rock stars and even royalty. Unfortunately for me, a teacher of the neuroscience principles of coaching. And Dax taught me that our actions are determined by our inner dialogue, and our inner dialogue is determined by our thoughts, and our thoughts are determined by our feelings, and our feelings are determined by our environment, and our environment holds onto associations from the past. So when I'm trying to use willpower and motivation and accountability to change an action, I'm actually using it to try and change a side effect. It's never really going to work. It's like trying to stop it raining by using a bucket. So you may successfully change a habit without this at some point, but it's probably just because it stopped raining. But when I approached this end and I started looking at my environment with curiosity and asking, what is it in this environment that triggers it? What are the ingredients of these feelings? And what are these emotions trying to tell me? And what are my thoughts? And where are they useful? And where are they not useful? And where can I approach this more skillfully? And slowly, I start to build a 360-degree picture of what I'm looking at. It's what we call prediction and response. And it turns out when we create prediction and response, our brain suddenly feels safe. And then the best next action just becomes available. It's easy to create a habit from this end, and it's almost impossible to create one at this end. I'm not saying that willpower and motivation aren't useful. They are. But really, they're only useful for doing one-off things like tax returns. But the greatest power of willpower and motivation is recognizing our need for it, and instead of applying it, taking a few steps back and getting curious as to why we even need that in the first place. That's it.